Hello, I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. My weekly confessions run 15 minutes, give or take, and Season 6 has been a personal journey into the AI unknown and a redefining of professional enthusiasm in humongous proportions for myself. So welcome. This is Season 6, Episode 16 of Confessions of an SEO. Last week I announced that the indexation portion of my research is completed. I'd be sad about it if I wasn't so excited about its successor. How to know what it looks like to be in the pathway of getting further and further into an AI model as knowledge. I'm calling it entity core research, and it's no longer the when it was just to be indexed. There is something so much more. If you haven't listened to any of them, start with the February 17th episode of this season because they kind of build on each other, and I'm going to kind of wrap it together, I think, in this week. And I'm going to explain a lot of this by using my current project, namely bringing a dead site back to Gemini life. Now, most of our industry is currently failing because the strongest voices can just, they bring us all back and they think that we're in a quality war. We are not. We're in an efficiency war. And if you look at the economic reality, Google and thus Gemini are burning through billions in GPU compute and cooling. Every time Gemini AI has to reason itself through a bloated, noisy site, it costs the machine money. This is what I talked about last week, the compute tax. So if your site is architecturally expensive to parse, too many hidden divs, conflicting microdata, or mechanical noise, your site is being taxed out of the information supply chain. Put a pin in that right there. The thing is, you don't want to be big. You don't want more noisy content. You want to be computationally eligible. You want to be in, effectively, it'd be great if it was a 1% club, a group of sites so quiet that the machine can't afford not to try to get all your information. Well, I'm going to tell you about my little lucky site. By 2025 standards, it was a good enough site, especially as a test site. But in the early February sweeps, it got hit with a computational eviction notice from the SERPs. It went from 75 pages indexed in Google's index down to 3. Knowing what was happening in the cleanup of those February SERPs, and we had a lot of fanfare about it because a lot of table of content laden enterprise sites from Shopify to Grokpedia to Google itself, the forensic diagnosis for all of them was the same as this site. It wasn't about helpful content. It was about signal noise. The site was full of my legacy testing fragments and not a little bit of topical fragmentation. None of it was connected. And if you start hearing that as computationally expensive to read, we need to get used to that, thinking that way. Google didn't penalize this site or any of the others, including themselves. What happened was they stopped paying the compute costs to even look at it. Now, what could be more fun, than taking a hurting, bleeding little site, evicted from the SERPs and put VizzEx on it to see, maybe it could be like, I could turn into Dr. Frankenstein and create life from death. But that site was 200 posts, and that is a ton of remedial work. So I wanted something I could recover in stages. So maybe it wouldn't just be one case study. It could be a study of recovering in stages. So I kind of came up with a little plan to do that. Now, I'll admit, it's going to sound a little counterintuitive. I didn't add content. I didn't optimize keywords. Instead, I chose to perform a tactical amputation. I unpublished 180 unconnected posts, which left me with a, quote, clean slate, unquote, of just 34 pages covering 4 categories. Now, I admit it's a hack because I wanted to get to 100% signal purity, but doing that on a noisy 200 post site was going to take me probably way into the summer, okay? I'm a little not as patient as that. So by reducing the architecture of the site to 34, and these will be soon to be perfectly bridge pages organized across just 4 categories with a very high semantic overlap, my plan made it possible for me to eliminate the compute tax within a week. I lost count, but I think it was probably about 75, maybe a little more internal contextual semantic links. And as of this past weekend, that little unlucky site became one of the leanest, most efficient meals for Gemini. Now, I've seen the forensic signs that the Gemini gate may have opened for these 34 pages. So the machine moved from ignoring to monitoring. And right now I would categorize it, the site's in a phase of settlement at this point. So while we put that in the oven and let that bake for a little bit, I kind of want to go over, let's look at some things that have happened. Let's go back to the March 2026 spam update. It ran 19 hours and 30 minutes. In 2024 and 2025, spam updates took weeks. In 2026, this past March, it took less than a day. Now that is some high-speed behavioral filter. Google has moved the spam noise detection almost to a pre-calculated edge. If your site is noisy, they know about you. They may not kick you out right away, but when that spam update hits, you're going to be flushed out in 24 hours. So what comes after these filtering spam updates? One guess, core updates. And when you overlay the Gemini release dates with the dates of these historical core updates, it becomes very clear that there's a time period, a sort of a lag time between them that you can see. So Google releases the Gemini model weights first, and then they wait approximately 3 to 4 weeks, which is what I call the RAG staging period, where they get things lined up. And they want to see how the new Gemini model handles this current information supply chain. In other words, our content. Now, when they run the core update to sort of bake the clean signals they get from those sites directly into the model. So they do the spam, then they do this release, the core update, and basically now the core updates are really quarterly batch inductions of content that they're moving from information, the RAG stuff, into knowledge weighted for Gemini. So these core updates aren't penalties. It's when the machine decides which clean signals get permanently fused as knowledge. Now, if you know me, I can't help but sort of poke around and see, is there some way to maybe predict the next core update? So, based on this 30 to 45 day window after the major model release, the Gemini release, and if you're not keeping up on things, Gemini updated itself recently. It can now navigate websites like a human. And if it's navigating your site and hitting noisy architecture, The cost to Google of that autonomous session is massive. All right, so we saw Gemini 3.1 get that autonomous computer use capability on April 8th. So that was, in a way, the starting gun. Google is now watching how those agents interact with your site. So if you're noisy, you're kind of failing the audition for the May batch induction, aka core update. So you kind of have 3 weeks from now to get quiet. All right. So getting back to my little engine that could site. Now that content is quiet, all of the hidden divs that were in there have been removed. The semantic connections and the relationships are now explicitly mapped out. So here's what I'm seeing. The data shows Gemini is engaging with these 34 pages in a way that seems to bypass traditional crawling. By every scientific standard in our industry, this site is still dead. It's not in the index, but I am seeing early and convincing evidence that some gate has opened. And that leads me to a couple of questions. Might be the kind that break our entire SEO industry. Will this data prove that content can be cited and served in Gemini without being indexed and served in Google search? Is it now possible to bypass the legacy index entirely? Are we entering an era where you don't need to rank? You just need to be absorbed, your information, by Gemini? And if this were true, that ability to do that is something that the antitrust settlement can't force Google to share. So that math hack that I did on that site isn't me saying make your site small, right? What I'm saying is make your sites silent. If you have, it takes less time, obviously, to quiet 34 pages than 200 pages. And it was done using VizzEx. VizzEx makes it fun. I say let the endorphins flow. We need to stop managing our strategies for the index. That is the past. We need to start managing for the model induction. That's the future. So if you're still trying to rank, you're playing a 2024 game. I think if you want to be in that 1% club, you have to stop the noise on your site so the machine can hear your signal, can hear your topic. VizzEx, in my experience, is the quickest and frankly most fun path to focus the signal and get rid of the noise. Time will tell if the index still matters. But data doesn't always lie. So if this site is coming back, and I believe it is, it's not because of added keywords or backlinks, but because it became computational eligible. And I won't see you in the SERPs. I'll see you in the silence. That's it for me this week. Thank you for being a listener to Confessions. As you know, VizzEx helps you create that topical vortex on your site, a clear signal with a logic map that LLMs love. You will be computationally irresistible. VizzEx is available now for WordPress or HubSpot, and in a few weeks, we'll be opening up another accelerator group for VizzEx adopters. The difference isn't more content. The difference is connected content with the lowest computational cost to LLMs. Go to VizzEx, VizzEx.ai.